As with grappling with understanding financial literacy, our biggest challenge with insurance is knowing what it is, and even bigger, who to trust to both educate and then get policies with. There are more financial advisors who are really sharks at the core looking to give POADUS policies that don't serve us and instead affords them higher commissions on sales. And of course, this practice is systemic. After the Civil War ended, there was the thought that America was on the path of amending its racial transgressions against POADUS. But by the 1880s, Jim Crow changed all that. Instead of a push to formalize and legalize discrimination against us, a concerted effort was implemented to marginalize the first generation of free POADUS. This was across the board of all aspects of daily life, including the cost of insurance. In 1881, one of the country's largest insurers, Prudential, announced that insurance policies held by POADUS adults will be worth 1/3 less than the same plans held by whites. However, our weekly premiums will remain the same. Benefits for our children didn't change, but weekly premiums for our policies would rise by 5 cents. Prudential's position on the decision was based on the fact that our mortality rate was higher than whites, obviously due to white terrorists continuing to murder POADUS and get away with it. As a result of these deaths, claims paid out for POADUS policyholders will be a larger amount of all payouts. Many of the major life insurance companies followed suit, thus making it nearly impossible for us to gain coverage. They went a step further by prohibiting agents from soliciting POADUS customers, and if they did, they would deny commission for any policies issued. Understandably, the insurance job was to calculate risk. It's what keeps the business afloat. So they used this as an excuse to use race as another variable, like occupation or geographic location. Insurance companies treated all POADUS the same, whether they were strong or sickly, educated or uneducated, from the country or the city. The science behind the risk formula is credited to Prudential statistician and author of Race Traits and Tendencies of the American Negro from 1865 to 1946, Frederick L. Hoffman, who promoted the culture of the fabled genetic inferiority complex of the black race and used it to justify the company's discriminatory policies. Hoffman used made-up data on POADUS health statistics that mainly came from Civil War-era studies comparing us with white soldiers. In addition, this was supported by many alleged professionals. Hospital administrator J.F. Miller and other researchers vehemently claimed to have proof of the inherent weakness of our race, reporting that the internal organs, including the lungs and brain, weighed less in POADUS than in whites, making us more susceptible to disease like pneumonia, tuberculosis, and syphilis. He further stated in his report, quote, "These laws affect him in the air he breathes, the food he eats, the clothes he wears, and every circumstance surrounding his habitation. Black Americans were more likely to live in poverty and often lacked access to medical care, among many other hardships. Still, little credence was given to the theory that environmental factors were the reason for their higher black mortality rate." End quote. This is the root as to why we've never had a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Hoffman predicted that POADUS would eventually die off like the Native Americans and that we wouldn't be able to survive in civilized society outside the bonds of slavery. The reach of Hoffman's propaganda behind the mortality rates did have lasting effects. Discriminatory policies based on race became the norm in the insurance industry well into the 20th century. In a 1940 survey, over 40% of companies did not accept POADUSs as policyholders. Today, 80 or so years later, we may be able to open policies, but in the race of life, whites have a 20 of the 26 marathon mile head start in the race to build wealth. Knowing this, my research has shown this form of arbitrage in insurance is still being practiced, and we're still none the wiser. Today, 57% of the American adult population have some form of life insurance. In 2016, Forbes reported only 7.2 million of the over 330 million Americans have a variation of permanent life insurance, but most are rich folks with at least 1 million in assets. Racially, however, POADUS make up a mere 3%, or just 216,000 POADUS of us with these kinds of policies. The rest have term life policies. Question is, why? What's the difference?